The big guy was asked about the airstrikes in the direction of the Houthis, these Iranian-backed terrorists. They're terrorists again.
Oh, yes, that's right.
In Yemen. Yeah, so they were a terrorist group. Then Biden removed the designation because, again, the philosophy is terrorists are just friends we haven't made yet, like it was during the Obama years, Joe Obama's first two terms, when it was, really you just need jobs programs, summer jobs for members of ISIS, and that would, quell the ugliness in the Middle East and elsewhere.
Remember when he called them the JV team?
And so he was asked about the effectiveness of those airstrikes, and here's what he said.
Are the airstrikes in Yemen working?
Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes.
Okay.
That's a real leader right there, folks.
We're going to continue the airstrikes until the Houthis' morale improves. For more on the situation on the ground in the Middle East, as well as with the ongoing protests in the West, we continue to have these Hamas sympathizers, engaged in violence in D.C. Several were arrested, protesting Sloan Kettering in New York. A lot of ugliness. Well, I guess what would you expect from people who are sympathizers of a terrorist organization? Alex Traiman joins us. He's the CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief for JNS.org, Jewish News Syndicate, JNS.org. Alex, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Dan and Amy.
So the Biden administration's late recognition that the Houthis are not our friends. What's your handle on that sort of the change in policy, change in designation, change in policy, and is what the administration doing sufficient to send a message to the lead state sponsor of terror the world over? That would be Iran.
Well, it was announced that the designation wouldn't take effect for another 30 days from now, and that if the Houthis would stop hijacking ships or sending ballistic missiles towards commercial vessels in the Red Sea, that the designation could be removed. So I think it sends a message about the lack of seriousness. And the Houthis have announced that they are not deterred, and they will continue their actions in the Red Sea. So, and meanwhile, the administration is not dealing with the source of all of these terrorist organizations across the Middle East, which include the Houthis and Hezbollah, Hamas, and that's Iran.
And give us your best description of where you see the campaign to eradicate Hamas being that's being prosecuted by the Israelis.
Well, I think it's been an incredible campaign so far. We're just over 100 days. Most of the Gaza Strip has been punished significantly for what has happened on October 7th. Israel has already almost completed activities in the north. Most of the residents of the Gaza Strip have been moved into the south, which makes it more difficult for Israel to operate in the south as they try to locate the remaining members of Hamas's senior leadership and also the more than 100 hostages that remain captive inside the Strip. But they're moving with tremendous efficiency, have killed up to 9,000 Hamas operatives, according to their reports, and have lost only less than 200 soldiers in the campaign so far.
Well, what's the end game there? I know Saudi Arabia is trying to negotiate a two-state solution, and Israel is saying no, which I understand too. But what is the end game?
Well, I think it's important to understand that prior to October 7th, Israel had robust contacts with Saudi Arabia, and the Abraham Accords that Israel signed a few years back, together with Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, would not have happened without the implicit approval of Saudi Arabia. And I can tell you that before this war started, that the Saudis were not the least bit interested in whether or not the Palestinians would get a state in return for normalization. And really, it was the Biden administration that had been, from the moment they stepped into office, trying to condition normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel on the establishment of a Palestinian state. I can tell you for certain that there is not one Israeli from right to left, not an Oslo supporter or an Oslo opposer that believes today that a Palestinian state could be the outcome of the worst massacre in Israeli history. The whole concept was supposed to be land for peace, and the concept cannot switch all of a sudden after this massacre into land for war.
Has the the communications, I should say, have seemed to, at least the public ones, have seemed to be tamped down. The communications of the sort we were hearing at the height of some of these protests in America, that from the Biden administration to we've urged Bibi to be more careful with respect to the campaign and to try to minimize civilian deaths. He could be doing a better job minimizing civilian deaths. All the sort of statements made of that variety in his direction, in Israel's direction. They have seemed to quiet down. Do I have that right? And if that is right, then what do you attribute that?
I would attribute that to the IDF being more careful than any army in the history of modern warfare to try to reduce civilian casualties. They sent millions of leaflets and text messages and phone calls warning civilians to get out of harm's way if the IDF had identified a target. Even if you go by Hamas's count, which they say close to 25,000 people have been killed in the attacks, Israel's saying that they've killed 9,000 Hamas operatives. You're talking about a ratio of less than 3 to 1, and that's when Hamas is operating in civilian centers, in residential buildings, in schools, and mosques, and hospitals, and that the IDF is being fired on by people wearing civilian clothes. So I think that the United States understands that Israel has gone beyond any level that it or any other military has ever gone to reduce the civilian casualties. And so any criticism to that effect at this point would just bring extraordinarily hollow, and it wouldn't do anything towards trying to push Netanyahu to do any other request that they had if they would criticize what's been an incredible campaign that no other army would ever hold itself to.
Let's talk about the hostages. I know that there's more than 100, but there's 9 of them are Americans. Do you think President Biden is committed to freeing or helping free those American hostages held in Gaza?
Well, they've already been held captive for 100 days already, and I think that you hear all these requests that the Biden administration has on Israel. You're not hearing too many demands on Hamas or on the Qataris or anybody else to get those hostages out. You'd think that the United States would have some significant amount of leverage, but apparently they don't. They're saying that they're working on it, but I think that every day that these hostages remain in captivity reduces the likelihood of their safe return.
I think people are still coming to grips with the viciousness and ignorance that is on public display in big cities in particular. But the protest I mentioned when we started the conversation, I referenced, I mean, this is really, seems to me, a new low. These pro-Hamas protesters outside Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York saying, MSK, Memorial Sloan Kettering, MSK, shame on you. You support genocide, too. It's a cancer center. Make sure they hear you. They're in the windows. Like, who is supposed to hear that you? Cancer patients? Cancer doctors? This is, I mean, the depths of, as I say, barbarism, viciousness, ignorance, ugliness, whatever description you want to use. How do you react to that in terms of what it says about some aspects of American culture and our quasi socio-political culture?
Well, this was actually the strategy of Hamas to begin with, right? They attacked Israel on October 7th, and they knew that the IDF, which is one of the world's most technologically advanced and agile militaries, was going to attack inside the Gaza Strip, and they had no possibility whatsoever to defeat the IDF in a battle. Okay, and so when the IDF would go in and they would start killing civilians because Hamas is fighting amongst civilians, what will happen is around the world that there would be growing international pressure, and that takes the form of world leaders that have proven themselves to be anti-Israel, criticizing Israel, and what South Africa is doing in the International Court of Justice right now, accusing Israel of a genocide, and also that there would be these large rallies in Western countries, including in the United States. But, Hamas has been working on the strategy for decades. This is as part of the strategy to undermine the education of Americans at university campuses, to be teaching anti-Israel materials in all of the Middle Eastern study centers, and also it's part of this DEI and critical race theory, and part of this just overall division of societies into victim and oppressor, and to charge Israel as the oppressor and to charge the Palestinians as the victims, and allowing victims to do whatever they want, even acting as brutally as Hamas did on October 7th. If they remain victim, it's all okay, according to what's being taught in American universities, and people are falling for it.
By the way, that South Africa thing, bringing a war crimes charge against Israel to The Hague. People have laughed at that and said, South Africa, Fetterman was one. South Africa sit this one out. And they're referencing South Africa in terms of being an apartheid country, sit this one out because of your history. Yeah, but that's not really the point, or it shouldn't be the point. The point is South Africa sit this one out because you're ruled by black communists who are also, some of the leadership there, we've played the clips, are calling for the massacre of white farmers in South Africa. Maybe that's why they should sit this one out. But it's black communists in charge of South Africa these days, not PJ Botha and the honkies from a bygone I'm not going to play Sun City era. Just to be clear on this.
Even Nelson Mandela was not pro-Israel. To be
correct.
Honest, they're accusing Israel of a genocide. First of all, the Palestinian population continues to go up year after year after year. Okay, so I think that the committers of genocide are, in history, are looking down and laughing at the preposterous notion that Israel could be committing a genocide. The whole Genocide Convention came into being after World War II, after the Nazis literally committed the genocide of 6 million Jews systematically in World War II to protect Jews against the type of attack that's been occurring on October 7th, when you have Iran creating a ring of fire around the state of Israel, calling for Israel to be wiped off the face of the earth, and funding terror organizations all around the state of Israel, and developing nuclear weapons which could effectively commit a genocide. The whole point of the Genocide Convention is to protect the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and instead South Africa, which had its own run-in with apartheid not too long ago, is now turning it on the Jewish people in the state of Israel.
Classic projection. Alex Traiman, CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief for JNS.org, Jewish News Syndicate, JNS.org. Alex, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Long day. Time to charge up.
Hey, just like my delivery truck.
Even kids know to keep business moving forward, it's time to make the switch to electric vehicles. Whether you have one van or a whole fleet of trucks, resources are available to help you make the changes that make sense.
Let's go.
Beep, beep.
Go to ComEd.com/clean to learn more about how going electric connects us to a better way of doing business and a better future for generations to come.
All right, it's a new year and the opportunity for a fresh start. Ensure you'll set those familiar personal goals like healthy diet, drink less, start a workout routine. But what about your business goals? Do they match your personal ones? How about spending more time with your family this year? What about increasing your savings for that vacation home? Maybe this is the year you've set out to train the next generation to take over or create that coveted exit strategy. No matter what your business resolutions are, Turnkey is all about helping you to fulfill them. It's time to make your business